Ugliest sin out here. It's pure white nothingness.
Where's my welcoming party?
How you doing?
We need to talk, you and me. We don't need the others.
I'm not gonna sign something just because you need me to.
That's the wrong answer.
The world we grew up in is changed forever. There is no way home.
Okay, last but not least, I don't think, is Larry Fessenden's The Last Winter. He's credited here, director, editor, and producer, and I believe co-writer of this film. So his hands are all over it. He also plays a very, very small role in the movie. I've talked about him before, on top of having his own sort of career of directing a lot of solid horror movies, he tends to show up in little acting roles a lot of the time. He often will do one scene roles where he dies. It happens again and again in the Session 9 and then the Brave One and You're Next. He's like in it for a scene and then he's dead type of guy. But he's one of those people, sometimes people will recognize him without recognizing him. We're like, that guy, I've seen that guy before. Before this, he'd written and directed a film called Habit, which is a sort of vampire movie, and another one called Wendigo. Exploring, not unsurprisingly, the Wendigo mythos. And his movies are very atmospheric. He's definitely a horror filmmaker, but he is not, this isn't Friday the 13th, this isn't Nightmare on Elm Street. He wants to kind of work your nerves. He's into the atmospheric, spook you out, get under your skin.
I would go with that assessment.
Yes.
This was certainly within the scope of what you just said.
Yeah, that's what he's going for. But I think that I would prepare people going into this. This isn't a carnival ride funhouse where there's a ghost jumping out of every corner or, where there's a lot of easy, obvious answers. Like, this is a movie that is as much felt as well. It's going for sort of the visceral experience. And as far as giving that idea of isolation and sort of starting with the camaraderie that is bred in all these people that live in this sort of harsh environment in these little houses, and sort of breaking that down to sort of the other extreme of when cabin fever, I guess they call it, when people spend too much time together. And this is also augmented by the fact that it's an oil company and they're going to do some drilling, and they're up in the frozen tundra and
Far north somewhere.
They're up north somewhere, and things are starting to melt and weird shit is starting to happen.
You were wondering if it was like maybe eco horror.
Well,
something like
that's the idea, I think, is that something is thawed out in the melt and is being something that used to be here, but it wasn't for a long time, is back. And either that, or you can interpret it, depending on how far you want to go down this trail, as finally the Earth is trying to fight back against this horrible virus that is humanity, which is doing all these terrible things. However you want to interpret the movie. That's one of the great things and valuable things about, I think, most, if not all, of Larry Fessenden's work, is that you can look at it from a supernatural perspective, or you can interpret it in another one. I think in this one, the dots are pretty connected conclusively that there was some spooky stuff happening. But
that's credible.
But I think it's the journey here, and really good cast. Kevin Corrigan's in here. Connie Nelson, who's been rising for her work in Friday Night Lights and American Horror Story and things like this. Ron Perlman, Hellboy himself, is sort of the big man in charge. And like I say, James LaGrosse is this sort of more environmentalist guy who's come here to assess damage, and it seems increasingly obvious that he wants to stop the drilling.
And he's not very welcome as a result.
No,
certainly not by the Ron Perlman character.
No. And most people just want to get the job done and go home, do their however many months and get home. This is a paycheck job for them. But things start going awry.
I thought there were those great whiteout scenes at the beginning, and where there was the sky was white, the ground was white, and there was no horizon. Again, in terms of the disorientation of an isolated environment, captured that really well. And again, that was this sort of thing. It's a visual medium, and I liked the authenticity of their the raccoony kind of snow faces, or the
They
reverse
overdeveloped.
raccoon.
Yeah.
Because you've got the glasses on, and for the rest of it, the sun is bouncing off the snow into their face. I liked the ruddy complexions. I don't know if that was necessarily by choice or a budget issue, or if
The movie
makeup-
definitely felt authentic. I didn't believe they were
there's a
faking
real
it.
authenticity to that,
Yeah.
and that I really enjoy that, and it made it as much as you can make this type of story real. That went a long way towards it.
Yeah.
The visuals are right there, and they were real looking people,
Yeah.
and they had real agendas, like you mentioned, the sort of more environmentally oriented individual shows up, and then there's real tension between those people.
Yeah.
I did enjoy that setup. That was not the cute college kids going on a weekend
No.
vacation that runs amok.
We don't see these people all the time, and these people are fairly interesting. And we
Yeah.
understand everybody's sort of motivation. We understand
Characters were pretty well developed, and they were individuals without being so comically diametrically opposed that they were unbelievable.
Yeah.
There was a shared common sort of humanity to them with varying agendas, and I found a bit of a realism to that drew me in, because that's the sort of thing I think is for me most effective, is supernatural things happening to natural people, right? Or good things happen, or bad things happening to good people, right?
Yeah. Everybody has their own biases in this. Ron Perlman's character is not going to believe that anything crazy is going on, because it's all, people go wiggy in the north, and this guy's looking for an excuse to shut us down, and he's just going to exploit this tragedy. Like, he is the Cooper figure, Ron Perlman, but it is somewhat motivated, and he's not a complete irredeemable prick. He makes a lot of bad calls, and that is his right, because he's in charge.
His calls aren't based on irrationality, though. They're based on a very rational, if not entirely supportable, profit motive.
Yeah.
It's pretty straight ahead. Like there's nothing really difficult about that.
And he's honest about it,
Yeah. Oh,
He's not necessarily altruistic in any respect in that way.
And not
But
hardly
I also
political
get
about it.
Yeah. I also get a feeling with the James LeGros character is like he wants to shut this place down, and he's right to shut this place down. But he was going to shut this place down. Like
He came there
He
with
came
that.
there to
Yeah.
shut it down. As every way as the Ron Perlman character had his own biases, so does the James LeGros. So they both have a part to play in the progressive chaffing that comes between them. And because, again, we keep on going back to Night of the Living Dead analogies, is that in this situation they need to work together, and they can't. They fail utterly at that. It works in sort of a psychological, sociological sort
It's a
of
good
element.
slow burn.
I also want to give it big points, because it's in that sort of comfortable crowd of spooky movies like Session 9 or The Shining, because it's scary before the scary stuff
Before you
starts to
see
happen.
anything.
The movie is already creepy and well settling into you
Yeah.
before anything really scary happens. Just the shot, the faraway shot of that lone shack in the middle of fucking nowhere is disturbing. There's something inherently disturbing about it. The shrill call of that crow flapping inside that room, it's unnerving and scary. And then, the evil in it, or the enemy in it, remains kind of mysterious, almost intangible for more or less the entire movie.
I think. You think it becomes tangible at any point?
Well, I think there's a couple times where we actually might have got a legit glimpse of it. But again...
Glimpse, yes,
Dep-
glimpse. But it's never explained. Like you were saying, is it the Earth striking back?
Yeah.
Or is it dead spirits of some kind? Or is it like... It was
Or is
really
it
left...
the hallucinations of a
very-
man who is very likely dying? Because you can also interpret that when we're seeing it.
Well, until...
Until the very end of the movie.
Well, not until the very end. There was that videotape that the first guy that died,
Left behind, right.
the found tape kind of thing,
Right.
and that thing that came up behind him
Right.
was seen to, and very ethereal, and maybe it was just snow, but they all saw it.
Yeah.
So the group hallucination at that point
It was a hard sell.
kind of goes out the window. So it seems like there's plus a hallucination wouldn't have left that guy dead.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe he froze
He
to death.
froze to death. He was out in the middle of...
Yeah, and then we all had a
nowhere
group
naked.
hallucination. So let's
Yeah.
get back to drilling.
Yeah, well...
And I got to say that that shot, that scene of that thing coming up over his shoulder,
Yeah.
that was probably one of the spookiest things out of all 6 movies that I saw. That was because it was kind of there and gone.
And Ron Perlman saw it, clearly. And you know why we know he saw it? Because he destroyed the tape as
Yes.
soon as it was
Yeah.
over. Right? Because he
I
didn't
don't
want to
want the
have to...
supernatural business interfering with my...
If he destroyed it and never saw it again, he can tell himself he was seeing things and continue on his sort of path, right?
Well, yeah. Well,
if
that
he
doesn't...
has to sit down and wrestle with this and legitimately talk about it, he's not going to have a lot of stable ground. I'm hoping that people listening have seen the film, but what we're actually making reference to is that this kid, who is the newbie of the group and the son of a close friend of Ron Perlman, starts going crazy, and he wanders out of their sort of little survival area stark naked in the middle of the night and just basically walks to his death as far as they know until they find that video. So he's also personally invested because he's got to make the phone call to this guy who, you know, originally he set up his son with a sweet summer job, and now he's got to call a guy and tell him his son went crazy and is dead.
Yeah.
There's nothing fun about that.
There was an irresponsible paucity of gratuitous nudity in the movie. Usually these sorts of things have a little more nudity, and I thought that was really dreadful of them not to really leverage that.
No fair.
Yeah, they spent more time on the story
Than on random acts of nudity. How
Yeah,
dare they?
yeah, that was.
This isn't that. Like I said, this movie is not about tits and gore. If you're looking for tits and gore, I will escort you to other films.
No, but I did like the way things weren't explained
Yeah.
very well, and there are lots of movies and lots of stories where it could be this or it could be that, and it's never explained. But as the audience or the reader, it is important that I have a sense that it is definitely one or the other.
Yeah.
And I think if the author or screenwriter doesn't him or herself doesn't know what the rules of the world are, I do think it comes out in the writing,
Yeah.
and is somehow less satisfying.
And
I don't need it explained to me that it's definitively this or definitively that.
I just
But
wanna
I have
believe
to
that
know. I
somebody
have to
knows.
know that it is either one or the other.
Yeah.
But if someone just does it because they're copping out,
Mm-hmm.
I think that does come through in the writing, and I think that's horribly dissatisfying. And I think an audience, to a large extent, senses it. You know, we kind of get the sense that there are rules to the universe, but we don't necessarily understand them all the time. But we like to think that there are rules, and so when you're creating this fantasy world, this fictional world, we have to think there are rules, even if we don't understand them, even if we don't get them. And if that incompleteness is there, I think it comes through in the writing and the execution, and we sense it. In this one, I think for me it was a bit too vague for me to make that delineation, and so it was a little less satisfying as a result.
I think that it's sort of pass or fail on how you feel about the very ending. Before I get to that, though, just to spoil the very, very end of the movie, I wanted to talk about another moment in the movie that has always stuck with me. There's a scene where...
When Dawn runs amok?
There's a scene where the two of them are trying to get to a settlement. The James LeGros character and Ron Perlman character are trying to get to a place. And Ron Perlman has fallen through the ice and has been rescued by James LeGros, but is too cold to go on. And James LeGros has got to get over this one more hill to get to where there's more people and get help. And he's almost there when he finally gets taken by this force, by whatever it is. He's picked up and he is pushed away. And he's being carried far away. He's soaking wet, and as he sees the lights of this town going farther away, he knows he is dead. And he flashes to himself as a kid, running through the snow, up the front steps, and going through the front door of his house. He just has this little flash before he is let go and abandoned to freeze to death in the middle of nowhere. And there was something so weirdly perfect about that for me, like, from that character's standpoint, knowing that he was dead and that he goes to this different but much better winter landscape from his past. In that moment, I remember having the thought that this was a weirdly, and it's not Canadian-made, ironically, but it felt like it was almost a quintessentially Canadian, like, horror moment. because we can all, at least I have memories of being a little kid and enjoying the outside winter wonderland and running inside and, you know, your nose full of snot and the light being all fucked up and weird when you go in the house.
Oh,
and
yeah,
the
yeah,
safe haven of being back home after having a fun adventure outside. And that he sort of takes himself to that place in order to escape the reality of his final moments, I thought was really, really strong. But to go to the end of the movie, and I think this is where you get the pass or fail, and you have to ask, was there a plaster man to this? Does Larry Fessenden know what's going on, like you were talking about before?
I think he does, and like I said,
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
It was even so. That's what I mean. It was. I like, as I said, I do enjoy when it's not spoon fed to me. I don't like it like that. Okay, I'm not going to go into specific examples, but I don't like it when it's spoon fed and this is what you're supposed to think.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the context and hopefully lead you down the garden trail, but I'm going to leave you enough leeway that maybe you won't see what I see when I looked at this. You know, for example, if I read a book and I go to you, Larry, I think is a good book, please read it, as opposed to I tell you what I took away from it.
Because that will change how I read it, likely.
Yeah, and so I do appreciate the sort of entertainment genre that does that says, here's how here was my experience, what do you think of it, and leave me the room to think about it.
Yeah.
Again, I think this one left it a little too much open to interpretation. I suspect, I'm leaning towards he had the rules of the universe that he'd created to build this story.
We have one survivor, the Connie Nelson character, who wakes up at some sort of emergency place, a police precinct or hospital or something. And she wakes up and you believe she's safe. And then you realize that this madness, this plague of supernatural evil, madness, and
whatever it is.
And I think there's a variety to the things that are thawing out of the eye. That's sort of how I choose them. But whatever it is, what they witnessed on that remote site, where they were just at ground zero to a wave of what I assume will be infecting the rest of the world. Like I say, the planet Earth is going to reject the human species like a bad organ at this point. Some of the people go mad, and some of the people get carried away by these weird antelope-looking ghost creatures.
Right.
And how those two things reconcile themselves, I won't say that I completely understand. But what I get enough is that whatever thawed in the ice is going to kill all of us. And that's what's clearly established in the last moments. The movie clearly doesn't have the budget to explore a huge global apocalypse, and Larry Fessenden isn't interested in that. He doesn't want to see
He doesn't need to be.
He doesn't want The Last Winter 2. He doesn't want to see the major cities trying to fight back against this evil. That's not his
He's already
bag.
put whatever idea out there, and now it's time for another idea.
He made the movie he wanted to make. And
It didn't really, like, for example, I guess you're kind of delving into it, this rejection or this mechanism, whatever it is, manifests itself in a variety of different ways, like why Don went totally homicidal, and other guys just ran out naked.
It seemed to affect some people and not others. Connie Nelson, James LeGros, and Ron Perlman, they started acting a little bit hanky, but they seemed to fend off the madness better than the rest of them. Everyone else basically ended up going crazy. Or
I think that was
one guy just randomly died of a nosebleed.
Is that right?
So there's not a consistent thing that's going on, but I think the idea that we're to clasp onto is that yes, something came out of the thaw, whatever it is, clearly supernatural, so clearly with purpose, and that purpose is to get rid of us because we're just doing too much damage.
Now,
that's what I took from it, and it worked enough for me. I'm gonna totally cop to being biased for Larry Fessenden. I like the man. I'm a fan of him as an actor and a writer and a director. I also think that this is an ambitious horror movie. I think that I will agree with you that it has some of the best scares of all of these movies, but it also has the fewest. But I also would argue that it stayed with me more than any of the rest of these movies, and I thought about it more than any of the rest of these movies. I just want to give it props for originality, like period. I think it's such a rare commodity to have originality to a horror movie. All of the other movies in the list, and I like most of them quite well, I can compare to something else, you know.
It's funny because this is the least amount I've written down. I think this is the most we've talked about.
Absolutely. Again, I think that's further evidence to the movie's credit.